you very much. It's real nice to be here this evening. It's so nice to see a nice turnout on this very important occasion. We have tremendous obligations to our veterans, and sometimes I think we don't do a perfectly good job. And yet, that is one of the prime functions of our government, to have a strong national defense. And part of that is our expectation that we serve when called, at the same time that veterans are taken care of afterwards. But many of you know that in the past that we've had a struggle to get all the care that the veterans deserve. After the Vietnam War, it was hard to convince the government that the Agent Orange was a serious problem. The Persian Gulf War syndrome was another one. And yet, a lot of money is spent and we still come up short. I take some pride in what our office has done in serving the veterans, and I do my very best. And I have to say that my past experience has probably helped me in many ways in providing this service. I was a physician 45 years ago, and I was in my medical training up in Detroit, Michigan. And if you recall, many of you will, that in October 45 years ago, it was October of '62. And that was a very difficult time because that was when we had the missile crisis in Cuba. And as a resident, I was not all that anxious to break up my medical training. And yet I can tell you that I volunteered. But let me tell you how my volunteer came about. I got a draft notice in the mail. And the draft notice said, "You're drafted in the Army as a buck private. Unless you want to volunteer, if you volunteer, we'll let you be a doctor and you can be a captain." So I said, "I volunteer right away." But the one good outcome of this was the fact that the government sent us to Texas. Carol and I and two small kids came to Texas. Matter of fact, 2 plus 1 small baby. We came to Texas. Then we decided to stay, and we've been here. So the government, we thank them for that. But you know, I've seen it. I've seen the problems that we face for our veterans and for our militaries. As a physician, as a flight surgeon in the Air Force, I was in as a total of 5 years. And both from the medical viewpoint and having served in the military, plus now being in Congress, it's a subject that I look at very carefully. I don't think there'll be, in the near future, any cuts. There's not going to be any monetary cuts in the aid for veterans. And that is good, except that doesn't answer all our questions, because we live today in an age of serious financial crises. So just dollars going into a certain area doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to be taken care of. When you think of Social Security checks going to the elderly and the retired, does that mean they're always going to do well? No, not if the checks don't keep up with the inflation. We are in a serious crisis today economically. And this makes us address this by both thinking about our foreign policy, our commitments overseas, as well as our commitments here at home. And as a defender of the Constitution, I am very, very cautious about our commitments overseas. Sometimes they're necessary, and they have been, and most of us have had to go and we had to serve. But I like the old-fashioned way of when we commit young people to go to war. And the Constitution is very clear. It says we should not go to war at the will of 1 or 2 people. It's at the will of the Congress. It's the will of the people. And I don't think we ever should go to war under the United Nations. Under those conditions, we're more likely to do what we're supposed to do in war. That is, decide who the enemy is, and fight, win, and get it over with, and come home. That's what we need to do more often. And we did that in the past, but we don't do that so much anymore. But the financial crisis is hitting us today. I'm on international relations. I'm very concerned about foreign policy. When I was called to duty, I did like you all did. We went, we did our best, we took our orders, and we did our job. Today in the United States Congress, I have an obligation to think about what the policy should be and when we should go and how we should spend our money. And quite frankly today, I think we spend way too much money overseas. It's time that we look to our problems here at home. It's time that we looked at protecting our borders here at home and not worrying about everybody else's borders around the world. We spend about $1 trillion for all our operations overseas. We close bases down here in our own country, in our own state. Ellington Air Force Base essentially gets closed down. A big naval base in Corpus Christi gets closed down. At the same time, we're building numerous bases overseas that aren't necessarily beneficial to us in public relations and in diplomacy. So I think that a lot of this money should be spent at home. Some of you served in Korea. My wife and I had a school teacher who was called up during Korea, didn't come back. We were in high school, we're still in Korea, but we're flat out broke. And we have to do something about that. If we're going to take care of ourselves, if we're going to take care of our veterans and take care of our problems, we have to think, is there a time where we don't have to be everything to everybody? Well, the time is coming, because we can't financially take care of it. That's what this financial crisis is all about today. I mean, just recently, this week, it was announced that the Federal Reserve had created $2 trillion out of thin air. It started passing it out. Now, CNN, to their credit, has filed a lawsuit saying, where did the money go? I mean, why did it happen that we the people and we the Congress have allowed this to get so far that government is totally out of control? Here you have 7 members of the Federal Reserve Board working in secret. I'm on the banking committee. I can't sit in on the meetings. I can't audit the Fed. They create $2 trillion, and we don't even know who's getting bailed out. At the same time, we're worried about veterans' benefit and taking care of sick people, and how are people dependent on Social Security going to be taken care of. So we have a long way to go in dealing with these problems.